Part 81. I am your lover, not your slave, don't restrict my freedom. In the White Mansion, the two lay down on the bed and read the documents together. After a long time, their arms were sore. Later, they sat up on the bed with their knees crossed, and turned their heads slowly, their necks were sore, and they looked at their stomachs again. The quilt was also kicked down by the bed, and a small half fell to the ground. Bai Xuelan put down the copy he had just read, and felt a little feeling in his thighs. He looked down and saw that Xuan Huaifeng was looking at it seriously and became fascinated. Unconsciously, he changed his posture and stretched out a bare, white and smooth foot. Probably because Bai Xuelan's legs are strong and useful for support, he put the soles of his feet on it, but his eyes were only fixed on the documents in his hands. Bai Xuelan's thoughts about office work suddenly disappeared. He reached out and held his flawless foot, bent a finger, and scratched lightly on the sole of his foot. Xuan Huaifeng was ticklish and shrank his feet, but was held tightly by Bai Xuelan. He smiled and looked back, and said, "Stop playing. Let's do things." Bai Xuelan played with his really small and delicate ankles, and said slowly, "You just do your thing. I'm optimistic about it here." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Have you really read it all? Then what do you think?" Bai Xuelan said, "I think their general idea is good, but it's too general to be practical." Xuan Huaifeng said, "We discuss and discuss again." He was about to sit up quickly, but one foot was held by Bai Xuelan, making it difficult to sit, so he lightly kicked Bai Xuelan and said, "Let go. Let's talk about serious business first." Bai Xuelan sighed and had to let go. Armed with Xuan Huaifeng, they leaned against the head of the bed, shoulder to shoulder, pulling the thin quilt over their waists, putting a stack of documents on the quilt on their knees, and said in a very serious tone, "Adjutant Xuan, come. Tell me what you mean to the chief?" After reading the document for a long time, Xuan Huaifeng had already had an idea, and he didn't mind his flirtatious tone, and said solemnly, "A while ago, you killed Zhou Huo and beaten opium for a while, but many people have been smoking for decades. It is impossible for these people to quit overnight. China has been plagued by opium since the Sino-Japanese War. How many times Lin Zexu has banned it, and how many years has it been tampered with? I read the document a few days ago. After Zhou Huo's death, didn't you shut down more than a dozen big cigarette shops and hand them over to the police department to deal with those shops? In fact, as soon as the police department took over, they turned back to the big cigarette sellers. Now, on the surface, they are tea houses and dim sum. The shop, in fact. There are arhit beds and smoking sets behind the curtains, the same supply of big smoke, but the price is more expensive than before. Besides, even if they are destroyed, there are many private smoke shops without licenses in the dark alleys. It can be seen that if you want a ban, you can only ban it patiently for a long time, and you can't be impatient. However, some new drugs that have become popular recently, you must pay attention to them. Do not take advantage of the situation to stop. The evil wind spreads, and the consequences are unimaginable. The price of heroin is high, and drug dealers desperately sell it for profit. This thing is addictive quickly, and it is much more harmful to the body than opium. So, I think, instead of piercing the hornet's nest, it is better. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Bai Xuelan heard him talk about the freshman fan's warm-blooded and loyal words. He lay lazily on the bedside to rest his mind, and the 4 words spit out from his mouth were miraculously matched with Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng was stunned for a moment, but couldn't help turning his head to look at him. Bai Xuelan opened his eyes just at this moment, his black eyes shining like stars. Their eyes met, and the two smiled at each other. Body and mind are connected, like-minded, sweet and happy mood. Words are difficult to express. Xuan Huaifeng smiled. His cheeks were hot, like he was being roasted by a red stove in winter. Bai Xuelan wanted to make fun of him, but seeing his clear and soft eyes, he lost his narrow-minded thoughts, overflowing with love and pity, raised his chin, leaned over and kissed his graceful thin lips solemnly. Xuan Huaifeng stared at him with a smile, his obsidian-like eyes shining brightly. The two embraced lightly, enjoying the pulse of this moment. After a while, Xuan Huaifeng remembered the unfinished business affairs, and asked Bai Xuelan, "Do you have any specific measures in your heart?" Bai Xuelan said, "The government intends to draft a management regulation to formalize these matters. I suggest drafting two." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Yes. One is for a smoking ban, and one is for drug prohibition." Bai Xuelan said, "No smoking is a monopoly on opium. Is it? I will punish them so much that they will be punished once. If you have money, the police department is absolutely willing to do it. Customs can't handle too many things. So you always have to rely on the strength of the police department." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Then drug control must be serious and urgent." Bai Xuelan said, "Yes. The situation must not be allowed to worsen." Xuan Huaifeng said, "I have another suggestion. Drugs are counted in. Morphine is also a disaster, and it cannot be ignored." Bai Xuelan said, "I thought about it. Heroin, cocaine, morphine, and their compounds and preparations are all included in the scope of the regulations." Xuan Huaifeng said, "When the regulations are set, the common people must also understand them. Those common names should also be written down, such as white beads, red beads, golden pills, red pills, white powder." Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "You have learned a lot since you got to the customs." Xuan Huaifeng said, "I also studied poetry. Lu Huo Gong wrote a poem called Shanghai Bamboo Branch C, which said that the most poisonous is no more than heroin. 3 points, standing high on the red pill of opium, people in the north are often called white-faced. Even a literati is like this. We should take the government's salary and do something more practical." Bai Xuelan said, "I see, you are a patriotic and passionate scholar. Let's nag, old master." Looking at the sky, it was time for dinner, and asked Xuan Huaifeng, "Are you hungry?" Xuan Huaifeng patted his stomach and said, "A little bit." Bai Xuelan glared at him, "You only eat a little at noon. It's weird if you're not hungry. If hunger hurts your stomach, you'll never stop calling me a stomachache in the future." Xuan Huaifeng blushed, embarrassed and said, "Where did you get it?" Bai Xuelan hooked his lips again, looked at him wickedly, smiled slightly, and said, "You will know at night." The two packed up the papers on the bed and got out of bed together. Bai Xuelan rang the bell and asked the servant to bring dinner over. After a while, the kitchen was ready and delivered. Anyway, there are no outsiders, and the two of them are very relaxed, wearing the same style of pajamas, sitting opposite each other at the small round table, eating fragrantly, chopsticks and spoons, and also talked about the points to pay attention to when writing the regulations. There was interest in the discussion, and the appetite was good. After eating 8 or 9 points of the dishes on the plate, a large pot of white rice was almost bottomed out. Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "I knew this earlier. I will talk to you about business affairs every meal, so that you can eat more." Xuan Huaifeng said, "You always want me to eat more, what's going on?" Bai Xuelan said, "You eat too little." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Why don't you say that you have a big appetite? I know that people from Shandong can eat very well and have great strength." Bai Xuelan suddenly looked ambiguous and said with a low smile, "I'm really strong, right?" Huh? Xuan Huaifeng knew that he wanted to go to a nasty place, and he didn't explain it. "Yes, I'll go and make a statement first, by the way." I should let Adjutant Sun also take a look and listen to his opinion. He stood up and walked out the door. Knowing that he was shy, Bai Xuelan was as sweet as honey. Turned his head to his back with a smile and said, "Are you wearing your pajamas to see him?" After changing into a homely clothes, he fled to the study. He summed up the points he had thought about one by one, wrote them down on a piece of paper with a pen, and took them to the Adjutant Sun's room. Adjutant Sun was still wearing a neat adjutant's uniform. When he opened the door, he saw Xuan Huaifeng. He said with a smile, "What a coincidence, I was planning to go to your side. Just for fear of disturbing the chief's rest." He said this very politely. However, Xuan Huaifeng knew that, "I'm afraid of disturbing the chief's rest." What is the meaning behind these words? His face turned red. Adjutant Sun asked, "Why did you come here in person? Did the chief call me?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Oh, the chief just mentioned the matter of making regulations to me. We discussed a few things and wanted to show them to you. Aren't you about to go there? Let's go together." The two walked towards Bai Xuelan's room. Xuan Huaifeng handed what he had just written to Adjutant Sun. As Adjutant Sun walked, he held it in his hand and looked at it. He didn't know what he saw, and his expression was a little different. Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What? Is it wrong?" Adjutant Sun said, "No, it was written too correctly." Adjutant Xuan was very careful and mentioned that morphine should be controlled, which is good. Morphine has medicinal effects. But when it was first shipped to China, many foreign companies sold them as smoking cessation pills. Some smokers thought it would really help to quit smoking, so they bought it to replace opium. But they didn't want to smoke opium anymore, but they became more addicted to morphine, and they fell deeper and deeper. "This thing is not superficial," Xuan Huaifeng said. "I heard what Adjutant Sun said. It seems that you know a lot about morphine addiction." Adjutant Sun shook his head with a wry smile, sighed. "Don't mention the old story of the old friend." As he walked in the door, "The dishes and chopsticks on the small round table have been cleaned up by the servant." Bai Xuelan sat lazily on the sofa, with Erlang's legs crossed, holding a cup of steaming coffee. When he heard the footsteps, he raised his head, looked at Xuan Huaifeng with bright eyes, and smiled faintly. Xuan Huaifeng suddenly blinked at his dark eyes, but he didn't hear what Adjutant Sun said beside him. "I was just surprised. How come it seems that Bai Xuelan has never been found so handsome and charming?" After being stunned for a while, he heard Adjutant Sun's voice coming, as if asking, "What do you think?" Xuan Huaifeng hurriedly woke up and asked, "What?" Kindly didn't point it out, and smiled. "I just said that this anti-drug regulation should be linked to the drug rehabilitation center that is being run." Xuan Huaifeng quickly said, "This idea is very good, and it should be like this. I just ignored it, thank you for mentioning it." He took the pen and added a line on it. Bai Xuelan asked, "How did you discuss it?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "Very good. Adjutant Sun has a lot of good ideas. Lots of fine print." Bai Xuelan saw that Xuan Huaifeng's mouth was dry and wanted to give him half of the coffee he drank, but when he touched it, he found that the coffee was cold. He didn't want Xuan Huaifeng to drink something cold, so he asked him, "I'll ask the servant to bring you a cup of hot coffee, okay?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I don't drink coffee at night because I can't sleep. I'll pour a cup of plain water to drink." Speaking of this, he stood up, went to the cupboard to get a glass, and asked Adjutant Sun if he wanted to drink. Adjutant Sun said, "Thank you very much, I won't drink it. I'll fall when I'm thirsty." As soon as Xuan Huaifeng walked away, Adjutant Sun leaned his body in the direction of Bai Xuelan and said in a low voice, "Everything is ready. Okay, let's start early tomorrow morning." Bai Xuelan said, "Be careful, don't leak the news. I don't want to give him a chance to hide his evidence." Adjutant's son asked worriedly. Then Lin Qijun is very careful. If tomorrow I can't find any evidence, what should I do? Bai Xuelan smiled incomprehensibly. If we can't find any evidence, we'll create some evidence for him. I'm sure that he and the guys in the Guangdong army who sell drugs are all the way, and it's not wrong to him. Adjutant's son nodded. At this time, Bai Xuelan raised his head to pay attention to Xuan Huaifeng's side. Seeing him flip out the clean glass, he picked up the crystal-clear glass water bottle with one hand, and hurriedly said, "Don't drink cold water. Drink a little hot." Xuan Huaifeng laughed and said, "It's only been a few months, so people are not allowed to drink cold water?" Bai Xuelan said, "It's not good for your health." Xuan Huaifeng said, "This is also boiled, it's very clean. It's not cold now, and it's comfortable to drink cold water. Otherwise, why would you put it in a cold kettle to dry?" Bai Xuelan asked, "Do you listen to what I said?" Xuan Huaifeng listened to his tone, a bit fierce, like a threat, could not help frowning. This guy's domineering is really all the time, everywhere. He is an adult. He has to apply for a trip, he has to bring guards to watch him, and he has to visit a sick friend. When he comes back, the chaos is turned upside down. Now, even small things like drinking cold water have to be approved. What's more, he was embarrassed in front of Adjutant's son, lest others not know his prestige to himself. Thinking of where he was annoyed, Xuan Huaifeng lost expression on his face, as if he didn't hear what Bai Xuelan said. He poured a glass of cold boiled water and held it to his mouth naturally. Bai Xuelan stood up abruptly, and when he rushed over in 3 or 2 steps, he raised his head and drank everything. Bai Xuelan was so angry that she gritted her teeth. His eyes suddenly became terrifying. Adjutant's son was most afraid of being caught in such an embarrassing incident. Seeing this, he jumped up as if someone had stepped on it, and said, "I'll go and sort out what I said tonight. And I'll send it over to the chief tomorrow to check it out." Slipped off. As soon as Adjutant's son left, Xuan Huaifeng put the glass on the cabinet, tilted his head to look at Bai Xuelan, and asked with a sneer, "What? I don't even have the freedom to take a sip of cold water?" Bai Xuelan asked in a deep voice, "Do you really want me to get mad? I told you not to drink. But you are fighting against this lord." The last sentence was simply a growl. A slap in the face. Xuan Huaifeng thought he was going to hit him, and subconsciously held his head in his hands. But Bai Xuelan's slap swept across the cabinet. Suddenly, the glass cups, glass kettles, and thermos smashed into the ground like a storm. The shards of glass splashed directly on Xuan Huaifeng's trousers. Although it didn't hurt, the sound was startling. Xuan Huaifeng was taken aback when he saw that he was so angry, and then raised his neck, stared at Bai Xuelan and asked, "Bai Xuelan, are you being reasonable?" His face was full of a palpitating aura with anger. He glanced dangerously at Xuan Huaifeng and asked coldly, "I just said today that I'm a robber, and I don't make sense. Can't you remember? Why did he go crazy just now, thinking that this man is handsome and charming?" Xuan Huaifeng refused to give in and said loudly, "Stop promoting your bandit theory. I can tell you clearly that I am a free man, not your slave. Don't use your Shandong warlord's tricks on me. I love you. Eat whatever you want, drink whatever you like, you." Cough. Cough. Cough cough. Linking Bai Xuelan's many misdeeds in these days, he was really angry. And now he plans to have a clear attitude during the negotiation. When he was excited, he spoke quickly and hastily, and suddenly lost his breath and could not stop coughing. Bai Xuelan's face changed drastically. He rushed forward and hugged him and asked, "Why are you coughing? Where are you uncomfortable? Is there any pain?" Xuan Huaifeng's anger was so bad that he stopped coughing for a while, and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't worry about it. He pushed Bai Xuelan's hand on his chest hard. Bai Xuelan scolded, "Bastard. It's all like this, and you still won't admit your mistake." Xuan Huaifeng was surprised, and was wondering why I should admit it was wrong. Bai Xuelan had already carried him back to the bed. Without ringing the bell, he just roared viciously like a lion, "Come on. Where are all the people dead?" Almost half of the mansion heard this roar. Not only the servant, but Song Ren also rushed in with his guards and asked, "Chief, what happened?" Bai Xuelan said, "Hurry up and call Dr. Kindle, who specializes in pneumonia today, and tell him." Adjutant Xuan coughed. "Bring a lot of medicine." "This golden mule, I said it was infected, but he said no. I had to kill him." Xuan Huaifeng was stunned for a moment, but only a few coughs caused Bai Xuelan's assumption. This can no longer be said to be cautious. It can be regarded as a psychological problem. Xuan Huaifeng sat up from the bed and said, "Don't go, I didn't." Before he could finish speaking, he was pressed down by Bai Xuelan and shouted, "You lie down for me. What are you doing? Call someone quickly." The servant didn't dare to neglect, and hurried to make a call. After a while, he flew back, wiped his sweat, and said, "Chief, drive." Kindle asked the patient's condition, whether he had a fever or chest pain, and he said that it was too late now, so if he just coughed twice, it would be counted. "Don't worry about the symptoms. Don't ask him to come here for nothing." Bai Xuelan's eyes suddenly lit up. "What? How dare he not come? Wow! Song Ren, bring 2 guards, take the car to his house, and escort him here." Song Ren had long heard that after returning in the afternoon, Chief and Adjutant Xuan did not know why there was such a commotion, so they invited foreign doctors as well. Although he was a rough man with a gun, he was loyal to Bai Xuelan and could do anything about it. He just considers Bai Xuelan. When I heard that Bai Xuelan was going to arrest the doctor, I thought that this doctor was a famous doctor who treated many officials. He was also a foreigner. Song Ren really used force to force people to come here. It's not like he's really sick. He'll cry and move. Song Ren dared to say, "Chief, I think the servant can't speak and can't explain the situation clearly, so the doctor misunderstood and refused to come. Why don't I make another phone call and talk to the doctor?" Completely confused, even listening to it. He was a doctor and it was easy to arrest him. But he was afraid that he would be angry and secretly do something wrong when he saw Xuan Huaifeng. Bai Xuelan said with a dark face, "You don't need to go, you can't tell well. I'll call him personally to see if he dares not come." His chin moved towards Xuan Huaifeng, who was held down by him and couldn't move, and said to Song Ren, "Look at him, don't let him get out of bed, don't let him get cold. I'll be back after a call." Song Ren agreed. "Yes." Bai Xuelan walked out like a breeze from the room. Song Ren waved his hand, called a few guards who broke in with him to go outside the door, and walked to the bed by himself. Xuan Huaifeng sat up early, his face flushed with anger, and he cursed in a low voice, "I've never seen such a bully." He lifted the quilt to get out of bed. Song Ren stopped him and said, "Adjutant Xuan, don't move. The chief told me to watch you." Xuan Huaifeng said, "What are you looking at? You go and tell him not to call. The doctor is really unlucky to meet such an unreasonable person." Song Ren asked, "What the hell did you do? You made the chief like this? I've never seen him look like this." Xuan Huaifeng said angrily, "You were with me all morning. What did I do to kill him? I just went to see Pai Yunfei's illness. He knew it was pneumonia. And he became mad like crazy. It was already extinguished. It's okay to go down. As a result, I just drank a glass of cold water, choked on talking, and coughed twice. And he made the whole world uneasy. He got pneumonia? Oops. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Xuan Huaifeng asked. What's wrong with pneumonia? Song Ren was so anxious that he didn't know what to do. You don't know about this. I used to be in Shandong and served as his fourth uncle's guard for a while. At that time, when we met his fourth uncle, they were called teachers. The teachers have no children, and they always go out to prostitute women. I scolded the little bastard. Later, I heard someone whisper that the teacher originally had a daughter who was very gentle and amiable, and the teacher loved him very much. That Miss Pai was very close to her younger cousin. Once, the younger cousin took a cold shower and caught a cold. When he got pneumonia, his mother happened to be away, so Miss Pai took care of her day and night. As a result, her little cousin recovered. She was weak and fell ill. The teacher was so anxious that he called 7 or 8 doctors in one breath. Look, the doctors heard that they were taking care of relatives who had pneumonia. And they all said that they were infected with pneumonia. Xuan Huaifeng frowned. No way. The doctor said that the bacteria of this kind of pneumonia are not easy to survive and are not highly contagious. Is the ward not properly ventilated and the air is not good? Song Ren said. I also heard about it. How do I know what kind of bacteria, the air is good or not? I can't guarantee that the doctors are not capable and can't find the cause. They were full of nonsense when they came here. Anyway, later, Miss Pai was sick and died. The doctors refused to take responsibility and became dizzy. It only got worse. The teacher died of his precious daughter, his eyes were red, and he killed them all in one go. He looked around, lowered his voice and said, everyone said. The little bastard who scolds the teacher when he is drunk is the one who killed his daughter's little nephew. Otherwise, the teacher would kill him because he was his brother's own son. Xuan Huaifeng asked in surprise, is that little nephew Bai Xuelan? Song Ren nodded and urged nervously, don't say I told you. This is a taboo for the chief. Before I came to talk to the chief, the old man over there mentioned to me, don't tell the teacher in front of him. That Miss Pai, if it's Miss Pai's death anniversary. You have to be even more careful. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help but ask, when is Miss Pai's death anniversary? Song Ren thought about it and said, it seems to be the beginning of August 3rd. Xuan Huaifeng calculated in his heart, thinking to himself, it was almost there. Sigh silently. The anger just now has flown to the sky. And my heart is empty. There is a dull pain. Thinking of the hurt in Bai Xuelan's heart, he acted so eagerly. In his own eyes, he was only arrogant and unreasonable. Such a lover really failed. Do not. It was completely unworthy of Bai Xuelan to treat him so well. He lowered his eyes, feeling a deep sense of shame at his actions. At this moment, the sound of footsteps approached. And Bai Xuelan's loud voice appeared outside the door. Song Ren hurriedly asked Xuan Huaifeng to lie down, covered him with the quilt, stood up straight and saluted Bai Xuelan, and said, Chief. Adjutant Xuan has been lying down and never got out of bed. Bai Xuelan said, go outside the gate. Wait, the doctor is coming by car. You will bring him over immediately when he arrives. Song Ren agreed and hurried away. Bai Xuelan walked to the bed, looked down at Xuan Huaifeng's face, reached out and touched his forehead. Seeing that Xuan Huaifeng was silent, he snorted coldly. You don't need to show me your face, you are here with me, just listen to me. That's the truth. Damascus sat down beside the bed, staring at Xuan Huaifeng, lest he disappear out of thin air. Xuan Huaifeng watched him look at his watch from time to time, and from time to time he stretched out his hand to probe his forehead and chest, tried his own body temperature, and controlled his face not to show any clues, but inside was already boiling. After a while, he turned his head to look at Bai Xuelan, and whispered, I'm really not sick. You don't have to be so nervous. Bai Xuelan said in a deep voice, don't talk nonsense. Turning his head, he frowned and looked at the entrance of the small courtyard through the window. On the other side, he gritted his teeth and said, "That damn foreigner, why hasn't he arrived yet?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stood up as if he saw something. It turned out that Dr. Kindle had already arrived, and was rushing over here behind Song Ren, sweating profusely. As soon as he entered the house, Bai Xuelan said eagerly, "Hurry up. Hurry up. Saving people is like putting out a fire." He kept coughing. Fortunately, he didn't cough up blood. Just listening to him explain the symptoms, drive. Kindle understood that the chief was making a fuss again, but he was yelled at by Bai Xuelan on the phone just now and suffered a thunderbolt. Knowing that this high official's style is fierce and unreasonable, he had to take a very professional attitude and help Xuan Huaifeng to redo the daytime inspection. He sighed and said, "It's okay." Bai Xuelan's eyes suddenly opened. Dr. Kindle hurriedly said, "I will prescribe some medicine for the patient just in case." He took out the prescription, wrote a few lines, and tore it to Bai Xuelan, saying, "Please follow this and go to the Western medicine of the big hospital. Buy it from the pharmacy and give it to the patient according to the dose." Bai Xuelan asked, "This is the end?" Dr. Kindle said, "This is all right." Bai Xuelan said, "He was coughing just now." "No, you give him an injection. Western medicine's modern injections are much more effective than taking medicine alone." Dr. Kindle hesitated. Xuan Huaifeng, who had been silent for a while, suddenly said, "Doctor, please. Give me an injection." Dr. Kindle looked at him, a little strange. Xuan Huaifeng forced a smile and said in a low voice, "I'll feel better with an injection. Do you have any vaccines for pneumonia? Or other injections that are good for the body?" Dr. Kindle probably understood and said, "Yes. Injections are more effective." I bent over and searched through the portable medical box for a long time, but found that most of the medicines I brought were first aid. But I couldn't find anything that could be used for normal people. Dr. Kindle pondered. "I'm going to call the hospital and ask someone to bring it over." Seeing that he was going to call for medicine, Bai Xuelan was obviously serious about seeing Xuan Huaifeng. So he felt relieved and hurriedly called the servant to bring the doctor to the phone. During the time, while Dr. Kindle was temporarily away, he sat back on the bedside, rubbed Xuan Huaifeng's hand and asked softly, "How do you feel?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I think it's fine." Bai Xuelan's face sank, and he said, "Lie, since it's good. Why do you want the doctor to give you an injection? It's clearly because you're not feeling well, and you give me a hard mouth. Your stubbornness is annoying. If it wasn't for your illness, I'd really beat you hard." Xuan Huaifeng had no choice but to follow his direction and say, "I'm a little tired." Bai Xuelan saw that his expression was indeed a little sluggish. His heart softened. His eyes turned gentle again, and he stroked his short hair on his forehead and said, "It's okay. This doctor treats pneumonia, one of the best in the country, and has cured a lot of people. I won't let anything happen to you." Xuan Huaifeng's heart was hot. Feeling moved and guilty, he stretched out his hand, grabbed Bai Xuelan's big palm, shook it lightly, and whispered, "Bai Xuelan." Bai Xuelan asked, "What?" Xuan Huaifeng was silent for a while, then whispered, "Bai Xuelan, I really like you." Bai Xuelan was stunned for a moment, as if he heard it. But he didn't seem to hear it clearly, and asked with a frown, "What did you say?" Xuan Huaifeng was funny and angry, opened his hand, and said, "I don't have a fever." Bai Xuelan still wanted to ask. The doctor had already called back, because he had to wait for the car to bring the injection over there, so Dr. Kindle had to sit down next, while drinking tea. I told Bai Xuelan carefully what the patient should pay attention to, nothing more than pay attention to air circulation, Pay attention to diet, and pay attention to hygiene. Bai Xuelan memorized it seriously and asked a lot of questions. Xuan Huaifeng sat on the head of the bed and watched Bai Xuelan treat drive. Kindle like a primary school student asking for advice from a teacher. Looking at it stupidly, I was stunned. For no reason, his eyes were wet. At this time, the servant trotted in and handed drive. Kindle a tightly wrapped aluminum box. It turns out that someone brought what Dr. Kindle asked for. Dr. Kindle opened the aluminum box, took out the syringe, and injected the medicine into Xuan Huaifeng's arm. Bai Xuelan stood there nervously and stared at it. When the needle was pulled out, it loosened inconspicuously in one breath. After the injection, Dr. Kindle clapped his hands and said, "Okay, this is perfect. I should go too." Bai Xuelan said, "Is this patient of mine important? Or please stay here for a while, anytime diagnosis and treatment. I'll pay you 3 times the fee." Dr. Kindle was shocked by what he did, and shouted, "Oh, that's not good, I have other patients." Bai Xuelan said, "Be careful with me. And then you will go to the others." Dr. Kindle gasped, "God's people, everyone has the right to survive. You can't be so unreasonable. If you don't worry, you can let him be hospitalized. And there will be a doctor at the hospital at any time." Bai Xuelan said, "No, the hospital has pneumonia patients and pneumonia bacteria in it. What if the infection becomes more serious?" Seeing that Bai Xuelan was wrong again, Xuan Huaifeng quickly said to Dr. Kindle, "Then please come here every day. I don't want to be in the hospital. If you come in person, it will be easier to take medicine and give injections." He is outstanding. A handsome man, with delicate and beautiful facial features, elegant and gentle. Wearing white pajamas at this time, his chest is a little messy due to the examination and auscultation, showing a 3-pointed beauty that is both masculine and a little sick. Which is very in line with the doctor's aesthetics. Once softly asked, Dr. Kindle could not refuse. Dr. Kindle nodded and said, "Okay, I will come here every day and give you priority to treat you. Don't worry, your lungs will be very healthy with me here." Bai Xuelan no longer insisted, and asked Dr. Kindle to pack up the tools and send him out. After a while, Bai Xuelan turned around, got into the bed, put his arms around Xuan Huaifeng's waist and asked, "Are you more comfortable?" Xuan Huaifeng knew that he was asking about the effect of the injection, so he nodded and said, "It's much more comfortable." Bai Xuelan smiled and said, "I knew it. Fortunately, I insisted on calling the doctor. You should not go to the hospital where there are patients, especially those with pneumonia. You must never approach." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Got it." Bai Xuelan couldn't help but wonder, looked at him and asked, "Why are you so obedient all of a sudden?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I was uncomfortable just now, but I was naturally angry. Now that I have an injection, I feel better. I'm in a better mood." Bai Xuelan snorted, quietly hugging Xuan Huaifeng and sticking his face to Xuan Huaifeng's face is both a gesture of intimacy and a test of his temperature. After a while, Bai Xuelan suddenly asked, "Did you say just now that you really like me?" Xuan Huaifeng's ears were slightly red, and he said, "I have a fever. And I don't remember what I said." Bai Xuelan chuckled, "Don't deny it. You don't have a fever. I'm sticking to your face. I'm a little hot, I know it." The two were lying on the bed side by side, listening to the low-pitched insects outside the window. Very quiet at night, beautiful. Xuan Huaifeng gradually became sleepy. In the middle of the night, several times in a daze, he felt that someone stretched his hand, on his forehead, on his neck, on his back, on his chest. He carefully probed, and he knew in his heart that it was Bai Xuelan, and he didn't speak. and turned around lazily, like a child. He grabbed the corner of Bai Xuelan's pajamas with one hand and rested his head on Bai Xuelan's shoulder. I fell asleep with a warm feeling in my heart.